Man to man, combat hand to hand, hands locked, ready for the last stand, elbow drops, kicks fade bang. If I can hate you, levitate, better settle mate, lights out, knocked out by the heavyweight.
Hi, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA. Today, lucky again to be with Mr. Richard Walsh, our head trainer at Urban Fight Gym, or Urban Muay Thai, as it says behind me. Very experienced fighter, coach, and also promoter. Thick history in Muay Thai, so that's why we're talking to you today, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Toby. Really appreciate it.
Man, so you've been a head trainer at Urban Fight Gym for a long, long time, 2 to 3 decades. How long's it been?
Well, we've had Urban Muay Thai up and running since 2010. Prior to that, I was at Five Rings Dojo for a little while. Prior to that, I was with Boonchu. I moved from all my early days was done down in Victoria, in Warrnambool.
Yep.
And I moved up to Queensland in 2001, I think it was. Yeah. And was just a pad holder at Boonchu, and learned a hell of a lot there under John Wayne and the Thai trainers there, and just loved it. Yeah, watch those guys on TV all the time, and then the opportunity come up that they needed a pad holder, and I was ready for a move out of my little town. I was actually just shy of buying a ticket to move to France, because I could see the Muay Thai scene in France was massive, and I was actually I'm a glazier by trade, but I specialised in stained glass windows, so that's huge over there. And my mother's family's from over there. So, yeah, one thing led to another. One phone call, and someone said, oh, they need a pad holder up at Boonchu. And I was like, I think they told me on the Sunday, and I packed my bags and started driving up on the Wednesday. So,
wow, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I heard you mention in an old interview that you that one of the reasons you went to Queensland was because of the full Thai rules rather than all restricted rules. Because I know where you're coming from, because I was from New South Wales and I was fighting kickboxing and dreaming of fighting Thai boxing, but I couldn't. There was nothing you could do there. So is that the reason you went up there?
Absolutely. Yeah, loved Muay Thai. That was my first love. I was very fortunate all those years ago through Bob Jones and Craig Larson and Scrooge that used to have Fight Night Productions, and I sort of started with those guys and used to travel with them to Pattaya and do the training over there. And I think I was 17 years old the first time I went over there. I'd never been out of Victoria, so it was a massive trip for me, absolutely huge. And Chief and Craig and that really took me under their wing and helped me out, and I just fell in love with it. And then to come home to Victoria, and there was just no Muay Thai fights. At best, you could get what they used to call international rules, where they took the elbows out. But then it was like you turn up to the fight channel, it's, oh, no, you can't knee to the head, or, oh, no, this guy doesn't fight. We never said no to that, so you'd have to fight kickboxing again. But I love fighting. I don't care. I did boxing as a teenager and had a few boxing fights even older. But I just loved the Muay Thai. I love the culture. I love the people. I love the style. And so, yeah, that really, when I got the opportunity to go, I sort of thought about it, but I didn't know how to go about it. And anyway, the opportunity come up, and I jumped on it. It was great.
Awesome. Hey, just to take it way back, you started to touch on it, but how did you start out in martial arts, man? You said you did some boxing. Was that the first thing you did? How old were you, etc.?
Yeah. So I tell the story a fair bit to people as I grew up in a beautiful family. Mum and dad were fantastic. Brothers. I had no hard times. I really had a loving family, but there was just a burn inside me that I just loved to fight. I don't know if I was because I was the youngest of 3 brothers or what, but I actually did a bit of soul searching there recently with my business coach. Actually, he's an NLP specialist, and it led me back to a time when I was actually about 8 years old, and I got assaulted at school, and it was pretty horrific. I remember because I was quite a young kid, but I don't remember a lot from my childhood, but I do remember this particular event. And it was so traumatic for me. I think my older brother, Ellis, he recognised how messed up I was from it. And he went and beat the absolute living shit out of this guy. Like, as soon as he could see my face, how upset I was, he beat the shit. And I do remember actually watching this happening and thinking, okay, next time something bad happens to me, I need to fight. I need to fight back. And that was at a really young age, maybe 8 or 9 or 10, grade 3 maybe. I don't know how old you are then. And then as I got to 12 and 13 and 14, when I started getting out on the streets and whatnot, and Warrnambool was one of those country towns where you had to look after yourself, and things were pretty tough back then. And then mix that with a heap of alcohol on top of it. And I was just a time bomb ticking. And I had a lot of fights and a lot of trouble, and I didn't know how to do it. Anyway, I come to a point where, as I'm not proud of this, but this is the truth. I was about 15 years old, and me and a couple of mates are a little bit older than us. We used to basically stay at the front of pubs and wait for people to come out and just have fights with them. And one of the local bouncers knew my dad, and he pulled my dad up at the pub one night and he said, "Your son's going to get into a lot of trouble. Let's get him into the gym and show him some boxing." So it started there. I didn't train with that guy for long. I really pushed back on the discipline. I didn't want the discipline. I just wanted to fight, and he was all about the discipline. And it's funny, like I said, I've been doing a bit of soul searching rather than if I could meet that guy again, I'd thank him because he really did try and pull me away from it. Took about 3 or 4 more years, and then Muay Thai come to town under Zendo Kai, from a Zendo Kai instructor. And I thought at that stage I knew I needed some help, and I went for the Zendo Kai. And it took maybe 6 months before my instructor said, "Zendo Kai is not for you, Muay Thai is." So I just focused on the Muay Thai, and it was in the very early days. That was, so I think I was maybe 16 or 17. So that's 1988, 1989, somewhere around there. And we were all still learning Muay Thai. We were all trying to figure out how it was done. And we were all, training with our hands up here and, and it just sort of blossomed from there. Then I got the trip to Thailand, and that changed everything for me. Once I seen how the Thais did it, I was absolutely hook, line and sinker. Yeah, man.
It's funny how many of you guys have that BJC background, man. They've really helped to build the Muay Thai scene in Australia, right? Like amazing. Nearly everyone.
It was amazing. Like it was really, well, it's still the same in the fight world today. You fight guys that you are friends with. You train with them at summer camps, or you go to a different dojo and you train with them, but then you line up and fight. And it really taught you the respect. You're not, in one way, you're not trying to, well, you're trying to win, but you're not, you really don't want to hurt him. You really just want to win. And I fought a lot of my guys that I class as friends, guys that I sparred with, and loved it. And just couldn't wait for the next. They used to do it on the first Tuesday of every month, I think it was. And back then, those days, you'd weigh in on the day, and often you'd get matched on the day. And it wasn't until you had a few fights under your belt that they'd start pre-matching you, so you knew who you were fighting. But it didn't matter. We just wanted to fight. It was great. Good times.
That's a good building ground for later anyway. And how did that first trip to Thailand come about? Was that like an advertised thing or just arranged through the BJC, or how did that work?
Yeah, it was a BJC tour. It was an annual tour. I think they'd done one prior or two maybe. And it couldn't have come at a better time for me. I was out. I'd moved out of home quite young, and I moved back later. But at this stage, I was out and about, and things weren't going to plan. And I needed something, and a good friend of mine, Greg Snow, who I trained with, who was a black belt in Taekwondo, but did Muay Thai on the hush-hush because he wasn't meant to be doing it. But he said, "Oh, man, you got to go to Thailand, and you got to get," he said, "so much so, I'll go with you. I'll take you." And so I went and see my parents, and they were like happy for me to go with this guy. And we went, and there was 30 of us in total. There was a big contingent of guys from Rod Stroud's gym over in WA. And then sort of a few from Queensland, New South Wales, and then mainly Victorian guys. None of us really knew each other. I knew a few of the fighters, but at the end of the day, Bob Jones was there, and I had a good relationship with Bob. I'd done a lot of time with him training at Shogun, and Craig and Troy Philippek, those sort of names. They were there, so we were well looked after, but it was just such an eye-opener. This is, like I said, 88, 89, somewhere around there. Thailand was a very different place. The camps were very different back then.
Yeah, not only Thailand was different. When you think about the context back then, like people didn't always travel around the world. Like now, it's a bit different, right? It's a bit more easier and cheaper, except for COVID. It's easier to travel around, right? Like now compared to then, and it was more expensive as well. So it wasn't an easy thing to think I'm going over to Thailand. Like you had to get the money together, and it was a bit. It wasn't as commonplace as it is now. And then, like you said, it was a different world. I can't even imagine. Like again, I've talked to a few of the guys, and they're always the same. Like it's a bit of an eye opener being a young fella going to a country like that, especially if you're from a pretty quiet sort of area. You go to a different country. That's a bit of a shock, right? A bit of a culture shock.
Massive shock, like massive wake-up call. this guy, Greg Snow, that took me over, he'd been there to Thailand before with his wife and family. He'd done a couple of trips over there. And one of the first things he did, I think we spent, we flew in early one morning and we stayed one night in Bangkok, and then we went out to Pattaya. And the night that we stayed in Bangkok, he hired a motorbike, put me on the back, and took me right into down by the river where the slums, where everyone was sleeping on the wooden slats above the river. And I was absolutely shitting myself. I was a young guy, never been out of the country. And of course, you get with all these people and you have these ideas of what it's going to be like. And I thought we were going to get murdered for sure for our, for our kidney or our liver or something. And he showed me these people that had nothing, and they were prepared to share a meal with us. Like they wanted us to stay. They wanted to talk to us. And it was so humbling. And I remember being in tears. It was amazing because, like I said, I'd come from a really nice family, a really good upbringing, and I can't say that anything was wrong with my upbringing, but to see these people in the poverty that they lived in, but yet they were still happy, and they wanted us to stay for meals. We ended up going out, buying food, and went back to a family's house and sat down and ate with them on the floor. It was amazing. It was total mind blast. Yeah.
That's it, man. And then on the Thai boxing side, so coming from Australia, going over to Thailand to train, what was the main differences you kind of noticed from what you guys were doing to what they were doing? What opened your mind in that way?
Clinching. Oh my God, my neck grew 2 inches. Because we were a kickboxing state. Victoria was a kickboxing state. So you had your hands and you had your kicks. Craig, Larson and Scrooge and under Bob, they did their Fight Night productions where they tried to encourage Muay Thai, but it just ended up international rules where you could sort of grab a knee. And it wasn't long after that K1 kicked in, and it just confused everyone what was worth a good clinching knee should have been better than just a punch, So the clinching was unbelievable. And also sort of to take people back and I heard Nugget talk about it the other day, was, they were out to destroy it. The Thai people didn't care for it. You'd paid your money up front to be there, and you were like a piece of white meat to them. They trashed us, threw us out the ropes, brought us back in, laughed at us, and everything like that. And you had to have a thick skin. And me being a young boy, like I said, 2 older brothers, I got a thick skin. So I kept getting back up and kept training. And I do remember one trainer saying to me, "Oh man, keep coming back," because he said, they're tormenting you and you're getting up every day. So it was hard, but I was young, I was strong, and I was fit, and I learned to love the clinching. It was completely out of my depth. We were only there for 2 weeks the first time, so there's only so much you can learn and retain. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I was come back to Australia, and I had fun with people, just throwing them over my legs, teaching my students. But definitely the clinch.
You might be happy to come home in a way after the intensity too, right? The duration that they train every day. Did you go through the full sessions, like 2 sessions every day for several hours?
Yeah, I did go through the 2 sessions. We only trained for about an hour and a half in the morning, and then they didn't make us run. That's the one thing they didn't make us do. They didn't make us do the big runs. We'd all rock up there in a group. They'd have a heap of pad holders there. Half the fighters become pad holders because there's a little earn in it for them. And this was back when Sigiton was only, I think it was 4 rings back to back. So it was quite a small setup. So we got out of the running. You could do the running if you want, but it was way too hot. Me coming from Victoria when I think it was May, the first time we went, it was like 10 degrees in Warrnambool. We got over there and it's 50 degrees and 100% humidity. So there was no running getting done, but we did train twice a day. I couldn't get enough of the training. In fact, it was around that time that Bob Jones was starting to introduce shoot boxing into Australia as well. And there was a young guy by the name of Matt, who was a really good shoot boxer from Geelong that was there. And I ended up rolling around with him at night, just being the pretzel, basically. He just tied me up. And Bob and Craig and everyone watched it. And that was amazing training too, yeah.
And then, just out of interest, where did that lead you to in your own fighting? I saw about a couple of videos of you competing. Where did you go in your fighting, man?
Well, it led me to more stick to my guns about Muay Thai. I still took kickboxing fights because otherwise it was a long time in between. Craig and Scrooge that had Fight Night Productions, they branched out and we started putting on shows in my hometown, Warrnambool, and Jason Hawker started putting on shows up in Shepparton. So he had a really good crew of guys up there. So what we ended up doing was we used to just put on shows. I'd take all my fighters to Jason's show, and when I put on my show, he'd bring all his fighters down to our shows, and we'd get a few guys from Ballarat and places like that. Basically, we did a country circuit rather than a city thing. Occasionally, we'd go to the city and fight for Paul Dermacolli, Johnny Sheeter, those sort of guys, and Michael Vukovic when they put on Muay Thai fights. I was managed by Tarek for a little while when he was around, and he would often put me on a full kickboxing card. He'd put me on with a Muay Thai fight. I fought Joseph Vamora, on a short notice because his fighter fell out. People like that would say yes to any sort of fight, But yeah, we sort of did that country thing. We stayed away from the city a little bit, and but it also come at a cost because there just wasn't so many opportunities. I fought a guy, you might know the name of, Danny Maxichev. I fought Danny 3 times because there just wasn't the opportunities to fight anyone else at my weight that wanted to do Muay Thai,
Yeah, man, things have changed a bit. And and what are the highlights then of your fight career personally?
A highlight would have to be the day that I lined up at Festival Hall and fought Leicester Ellis.
Oh, yeah, awesome. I did see that. That's online.
Dude, there's a whole story goes with Leicester. I started training for that fight and it got cancelled. Something happened to Leicester. I started training again. I think I got hurt. Something, he fought Steve Dewey or something in Sydney. Anyway, it got postponed. Anyway, it finally come about under Tarek. And like I said, Tarek managed me. Tarek had a very love-hate relationship. Some people hated him. Some people loved him. I found Tarek the most honest, not the most honest promoter in the world, but just an honest guy. He was easy to talk to. Whatever he told me he was going to do for me came true. So I thank him to the end of the day for that. But this fight, I was so out of my depth, fighting kickboxing against a guy who was a boxing world champion, Johnny Sheeter helped me out. Johnny, I love Johnny to the Blue Star and back. He's an awesome guy, He took me on, charged me nothing to train with him. I drive from Warrnambool down to Sunshine, which is about 2.5, 3 hour drive every Saturday morning. Train with Johnny, he'd hold pads for me, he'd get in my ear and talk to me. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and done it for the love of doing it, But the lead up and to that fight was just next level. I've never experienced anything like it since, as far as personally. I had interviews on TV, on the radio, all this sort of stuff. I was put in the same room as Leicester, and Leicester was so easy to get along with. Like it was brilliant, just absolutely great to get along with. We did the face-to-face offs, everything like that, but it was very foreign to me because the kickboxing world was like what UFC is now, where they face off, they might push each other, all that sort of stuff. Whereas Muay Thai, like I said, I fought Danny Maxichev 3 times. The last time I fought him, we went out for dinner together and I slept on his couch that night. Like we were mates, but we were there to fight. Where he had his own crowd to impress. So that's the difference. And the kickboxing world, it was very different. And when I came to the weigh-in, the night of the fight when I fought Leicester, I turned up by myself because I was in Melbourne at my auntie's place and I went down. And I'll never forget, Tarek said to me, Richard, where's all your entourage? Where's all the people that support you? And these guys were walking in with 30, 40, like Gurkhan Ozcan, 40 people coming in behind him, holding his coat, holding his bag. And I walked in by myself. And I said, well, Tarek, I'm the only one that has to weigh in. And Peter the Chief Graham was fighting that night. I think he might have fought Stan the Man that night. I can't remember, but he just burst out laughing. And Alex too, he said, Richard, come and sit with us, like you can hang with us. And I made friends with them out of just that simple comment, and I'm still friends with Peter today. But then to line up on the day, and I, that morning, for example, it was also laid back for me. Like I worked for 3.5 hours in my auntie's garden, weeding the garden and moving rocks for her. And because she said, you stay in my house, you got to help me out in the garden. I'm like, Val, I got to rest for this big fight. Kickboxing, it's all fun and games, she said, Anyway, I went to Festival Hall and there was 5,500 people in there. And when those lights come on and the, like every set of eyes is looking at you, 4,500 of them were there for Leicester. They were there. And then just as we're walking out to the ring, they put us backstage in the same room. Well, I'd been in the same room with Leicester regularly at the weigh-in and at the press conference, and he was fine. At the backstage, he attacked me. Like he comes straight for me. He wanted to kill me. And the look in his eye was just, I'll never forget it. And it broke my heart. I didn't know how to handle it, you know, and I was frightened. And I went to the ring and I thought, I've got to kick this guy's legs. I've just got to chop his leg. Just let me chop his legs. And the whole 9 months of training for this fight, I'd practice, don't step around so he can hit my body. Like take my body, because it was the body snatcher. That was his fight name, you know, one of his fight names. Leicester, the blaster, Ellis or something, but one of his nicknames was the body snatcher because he was so good at body punching. So I trained to step to the left, keep away from that body. First step I took, I stepped out to my right. He popped me in the body. I was down. I thought he'd broken my back. I hit the ground. I couldn't move. I literally couldn't straighten my legs out, even once they counted me out. And I was not only embarrassed, I was heartbroken and everything. And just to make it even worse, I donated my purse. This was the biggest purse I'd ever received. And I thought to myself prior to the fight, I don't want to hit the ground and think, oh, well, this is my biggest payday. I'll just stay here and take it. So I donated my pay to Make-A-Wish Foundation. So not only have I got beaten in front of all these people, and it was, you know, like that was embarrassing. Then I had to stand there and listen to Leicester's speech. And then I had to get up and donate this oversized check via Tarek to Make-A-Wish Foundation and try and talk to them. And it was such an experience. Like, don't get me wrong, I love it. And people say they wouldn't change it for the quick. I'd change it. I changed it to where I win, but it was brilliant because it just showed me how these guys have so many people, so much pressure, and how they deal with it. And now with the fighters I train, I use that experience on a day-to-day experience. Like, this is what to expect. No one told me this. I figured this out for myself. This is what to expect. People will say this, you know, this is how you answer this question. This is how you deal with someone in your face and everything like that. So, and that body shot, like I said, there's a lot to tell about Leicester because I love the guy. Don't get me. I actually rang him after the fight and I said, dude, I've never been hit like that. I want you to show me how to do that. And he did. I went and trained with him. I went to his house and he showed me how to do it. He's taught me things from that I have now taught to other fighters. That you'll see a common thing in my fighters is they know how to throw a good body shot. You know, people that will listen, and because it's just coming from a 9-time world champion Leicester via me to them. And I love that. I love that's the sport, the part of the sport that I love. That he was like, yeah, come up and do it. And I spent a couple of days with him, which were crazy, but he showed me how to do this body shot, and I love it. It's one of my favorite shots.
Well, you learn it the hard way, man. It wasn't an easy way to learn that punch, man. Jesus.
Yeah, it was hard, and it did hurt. And I jokingly say to people, I can still feel that. But, you know, like anyone that's been in a gym that's had a shot to the liver or whatever it is that it's inside, if you've had that body shot, you never forget it. Like, it just stays with you. Some people you can hit and it takes forever to get it through. But some people, when it lands, they just fold, you know, and they lay on the floor. And sort of a nice way to knock someone out because it's not hurting their head. You know, they recover from it. You can stand up, but the pain is immense, you know. And that's what I still love watching traditional boxing because of the guys that know how to hit the body.
That's it, man. As you mentioned, it's a strong part of Carnage's arsenal, right? He always throws that in his combinations, the body, high-low.
Yeah, and it's, you know, like Nathan, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that he knew how to do stuff, but I just helped him really knuckle down on it and make sure that it was perfect. You know, the guy had so much ability, and he was a pleasure to train. He was so easy to train. My mother could have trained Nathan Corbett because he had it all. He had everything. But it's just my role. I say to people now, and looking back on it, and this is with totally hand over heart, is my role is to keep a cap on Nathan. My role wasn't to show him how to do stuff. It was to keep a cap on him. He had a million people around pissing in his pocket, telling him how good he was and do this, do that, you know, like, and I had a great relationship with Nathan that I could tell him what I was thinking and the truth, and he would take it on the chin, whether he liked it or not. And he would fire back at me and say shit that other people would end up in an argument. I think in all the time that I trained Nate, we had one argument. And that's when I wasn't actually training him. He was having a bit of a break and whatnot. And we had an argument at an airport one day over a fighter that was about fighting. That's it. The rest of the time, we had a great relationship that I could say stuff to him, say, hey, man, I don't know if this is the right thing to do. Or, you know, I think this guy's talking it up a bit because you're the champ. He wants to be with you. And it was sort of good because it just helped him realize and stand back a little bit and say, okay, you know, this might not be the best option, or this is not the road I want to go down. And yeah, so that was our relationship. But yeah, I say to a lot of people, they say, oh, you trained Nathan Corbett? I said, yeah, well, I did, but I think more as because I'm a little bit older than Nathan. I'm almost 50, so I was more of a mentor to knock the bullshit off the top for him and let him do his thing. He was a beast, man. He was a beast. The pad section
definitely still is a beast, man. When you look, I still follow him on like Instagram, Facebook, etc. And I see thinking when he brings up the guys to demonstrate them, in the back of their mind, they must go shit, you know, because he throws the combo. Yeah. It's not hard for him, but you can feel it, right? You can see it. You can see those shots on the legs. They're feeling it a bit.
Dude, that's why he is what he is, because even sparring sessions, a couple of times we brought people into sparring. I think he just destroyed them. Just absolutely destroy them. I remember one guy, we flew him up from Melbourne, got him a motel room for a couple of nights, and lovely guy. Like, I got along with him. I said, please do me this favour, come up and spar Nathan. He come up and spar. He lasted one night, and he said, I'm not doing that, man. I'm getting destroyed. You know, like that was Nathan's thing, and bless him. That's what got him to the top, because everything was a competition for him. If you're in the gym and you do 50 kicks on the bag, he'd do 60. That simple thing. But that's why he's the champion, because he put that extra time in. And I do tell a story that one time I remember doing pads, and I think we were getting videoed and we were doing the pads, and you know, like, cameraman's like, oh, that's amazing, and everyone's patting him on the back and that. And Nathan rang me at like probably 7:30 at 8 o'clock at night, and he said, what did you think of that pad session? I said, well, hopefully they can edit it, because I didn't actually think it was that great. We went back into the gym that night and did pads, so we did them properly. You know, that's the stuff that people don't see that in the ring. People don't see that, you know, that's the stuff you just do for your own satisfaction, you know. The great saying of what's done in the darkness is revealed in the light. Well, that's Nathan. The stuff he did in the gym when there's no one else around. When I moved away for a little bit, I went mining, so I was on and off doing flying, so I couldn't always be there. And you had another pad holder bull that they trained in a shed, the two of them, with no one there. One light above the ring, two of them training in a shed. And that's what makes you a world champion. What are you prepared to do? You know?
True, man. Hey, a couple of the fights that really stick in my mind from Nathan are the Steve McKinnon kind of, what would you call, rivalry, and then their fights, and then also the Spong fight where Nathan landed the big hook. Were you either of those ones, man?
Yeah. So the first time he was lined up to fight McKinnon is when the big bikie brawl happened up at Royal Pines. So that all got cancelled. We went down to Sydney, and it was still pretty tense. And even on the bike level, because a few of the guys that were involved in that thing were there. So that was very intense going into their ground. I learned a very valuable lesson that night when we checked into our motel rooms. Someone went to reception and asked for Nathan's room, and for whatever reason, reception gave to him, and they delivered a package to his room that I thought was funny, but Nathan didn't, and it really upset him. And we actually rang Stu McKinnon and said, Stu, this is what's been delivered. We don't find it funny. You know, Nathan's upset. You know, let's have a bit of respect. He's the champion, whether you like it or not. Stu probably laughed at it. I don't know. But at the end of the day, that's what made Nathan like a total killer. He takes things personally. When you say things to him, he takes things very personally. So when they did that to him, he channeled all that energy into Steve and absolutely destroyed him that first fight. Like, cut him up. Everyone's seen the highlights there. He taught. It's only that Steve, and respect to Steve, I always have respect for Steve. He was so fucking tough. He kept getting up. Most people would have stayed down, and he ended up with multiple cuts. But he's so tough. He keeps getting up. That was the first one that was done and dusted. There was a lot said and done leading up to the second one, where we did it up on the Gold Coast under the Carnage promotion banner. And I feel still to this day, everyone spoke about the improvements that McKinnon had made since that first fight with Carnage and the improvements. But sitting back and on the outside, I pulled myself right back from it. And one of the things I said at the press conference, I said, without disrespecting Steve, is he could only have improved because he got bashed in Sydney. But I said, if you think Nathan's sitting at home on the couch waiting for people to challenge you, you're an idiot. If you think you've improved and he hasn't, you're kidding yourself, because he got better between those fights. We had other fights as well, and and true to the world, another tough fight, but Nathan dominated, so they were big fights. They were really good shows, really big events, a lot of pressure, and like I said before, that's where my role came in with Nathan, that I was able to talk to him at the level that he needed to be at. If I could see the tension building with him, I'd just pull him from that situation. We'd go for a walk down along the beach, come back, and just to let him chill out, just because he was such an intense guy. He is an intense guy. He's not was, he is. Now, if the Nathan does, there's no, like I've been to his house, dude. I know how he lives. He's everything's set out. It's beautiful. It's well maintained, because that's Nathan. That's what he does. So.
Yeah, man.
The Spong one, man. that was. I mean, they just kept getting bigger and bigger. That was the biggest show for a long time. I think there was 12 world title fights on that night. 11 of them were Muay Thai. One of them had no elbows, and that was Nathan's fight. And that was great management on Spong's behalf, like really good management, because they said, we're not coming unless you drop the elbows. But, what happened, and it was just amazing, the repercussions that come from that fight, the never-ending, it just went on for months and months and months. The rematch clause, I was talking to, I think his manager at the time was called Ramon, and I was backwards and forwards in trying to get the fight in Holland, because I knew it was even a better payday for Nath, and we just couldn't get it to happen because there was so much tension in the air. It was crazy, and then it ended up happening in glory.
In that first fight, I seem to remember something. I can't remember where it came from, but someone said in the corner between rounds, someone mentioned to him to switch stance and try and hook him on the elbow. And then when he's throwing that knee, was that something that happened, or is that just something I'm imagining?
No. Nathan was in a bit of strife. So he'd been knocked down once, if not twice, in that first round, I think it was, or second round, but he come back to the corner with, he was a bit lost as to what to do. We had some other guys in the corner. I just tried to keep it as calm as I could. But my advice to Nathan was, when he was changing, is to go straight up the middle. Like he needed to, and that's what I said. I said to him, and to be honest, I don't think he actually understood what I said. I was trying to say to him, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So you're the type of fighter that walks forward and puts it up the middle. Okay, so when Spong was coming inside your front leg, I wanted him to attack then. Let Spong come to the inside of the front leg and then attack. So I said to him, you live by the sword, die by the sword. You've got to go straight up the middle and attack up the middle. But I don't think it actually went into Nathan. But prior to that, he'd had some major injuries with hands. I think it was hands, maybe his foot. And we trained a lot of southpaw, lots of southpaw, where we would do 8 rounds on the pads. 3 of those would have been done southpaw. And you see Nathan come out of that ring, he starts at orthodox, something clicks in his brain to go to southpaw, and he did, and lands that cross and hook. Later on, after we got to Jamaica, we had fun. We went back to Vegas, we had some more fun. But I do remember sitting down with Nathan, and he said, what did you mean by live by the sword, die by the sword? And I said, well, my thing is you're a killer. You go in and kill people. That's what you need to do. If he's trying to do that to you, you have to just turn up the power. I said, the fact that you've switched to southpaw shows me you are now on another level. You are right up here to be under that much pressure and be calm enough to go southpaw against a killer who's actually, well, I would say Spong was ahead, to be able to have that calmness and do it. That's just showing me you've gone to another level. And yeah, that was at one of those real deep and meaningful moments after a few drinks, sitting around the pool and talking. We're actually in the motel room. I said, man, it's amazing. I'm actually honoured I'm part of it, because you've shown me how much of a clear thinker you can be under extreme pressure. Most people would have folded, yeah. So
and naturally, you'd probably go to what is the easiest for you and the most natural, which is orthodox, right? And he's just suddenly switched it up in the middle of it. That's pretty good.
And he's not only switched it up, he's done it like he was a southpaw. He's done it perfectly. Left hand lead and hook, and floored the guy. I mean, the confusion that come afterwards, and I mean, I don't know if many people know this. When you look at that video and watch it closely, the referee waves off Spong after an extended period on the ground, right? He's on the ground for way too long. Now, Nathan and I had a thing that, or I do it with any of my fighters. if they knock their fighter down, they're to run to the neutral corner and look at me only. Even if the fighter's on the ground between us and him, they're to look at me. I've got two signals. I've got one that it's just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep, because he's down, but he's not that hurt. Like he might be taking a knee or whatever. But then I've also got finishing. If he's hurt, finish him. Well, I seen Spong on the ground. I thought there's no way this guy's going to put a count on him. And he started counting. After an extended period, he started counting then. And I was actually baffled. So Nathan's looking directly at me. I'm looking at Spong and realise this guy's counting. So I look at Nathan and say, finish him off. Nathan then turns back to the referee, who has already waved off and then just walked off and left Spong standing. So hence why Nathan charged in and finished Spong off, right? Total inappropriate refereeing. Everyone knows when someone's hurt, you're to hold them, protect them. I mean, the really good Thai guys will put the fighter's arm over the rope so he doesn't fall over and hurt himself again. This ref just waved over. In fact, I think he did it low by memory and then walked off. Spong standing there like this, like the gunfighter that he is, like always prepared to go. Nathan turned from looking at me, looked at him, thought, all right, we're on. So jumped in, knocked him over, and then that's when the protests come out and everything like that. So
yeah, man.
I don't know if many people know that, but that's exactly how
I didn't know that, and you couldn't work out that, but you could pretty clearly see. Obviously, Carnage is professional enough not to attack someone when it's been waved off, but the ref waved off and stepped back, and he just caught that last part with the ref stepping back. So it's pretty obvious that something happened, not knowing that it was your fault, actually. No, not your fault.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, like I said, he had that intense eye contact with me, and that's what he was trained to do. Watch me to see what I did. Keep going or finish him off. It's as simple as that. And, really ordinary wave off, and you never leave a hurt. If you've waved someone off, you've got to protect them. Got to get them back. Sure. I want to help them out.
Cool. And you've worked. You've had the honour of working not only with Corbett, but Carnage Corbett, with a few other big names: John Wayne Parr, Paul Briggs, Shannon, F16 Forrester, amongst others. Man, any things that stand out? Fighters that stand out amongst them, as in your mind when you think back? Yeah,
look, everyone knows John Wayne. I mean, I love training with John Wayne. It was really good fun. Excuse me. I learnt a lot from John Wayne. I really was a paddle holder for John Wayne. That was my role, and I soaked it up. Absolutely loved it. But one fighter that stays in my mind, Paul Briggs, was another great one. I only did boxing with him, and I really did sign up for that job because of his trainer. I'd heard of his trainer, I knew his trainer, and I learnt so much about boxing from his trainer. So, training with Paul was great. It was a great adventure. But the one guy that I always say to people that was the most gifted fighter I've ever had the pleasure of training with is Shannon Forrester. He was amazing. I met Shannon in Chiang Mai just before I moved up here to Queensland, and I trained with him there, and I love his nature. He's such a peaceful person. He's just a loving, peaceful. He's always out. He is that guy that gives his shirt off his back to a homeless person or a stranger. I got to live with Shannon and got to see a whole different side of him, but the fighting was just unbelievable. What you could ask this guy to do and what he would go out and deliver was so good. As a trainer, your job is to sit in the corner and not look at your fighter. It's to look at the opposition, see where the holes are, see what he's doing wrong, and then just go and say to that boxer, hey, he doesn't block, check his legs, or he drops his right hand when he throws his left, wait and hook him. And with Shannon, it was a piece of cake. It was a really good fun. I had a lot of fun with Shannon and learning from him. But as everyone knows, my biggest highlight of my life was training Nathan. Like I said, I went away and did a bit of mining, and I came back. Nathan's work ethic and the way he held himself in society, the things he stood up for, is what makes him the man that he is. The amount of times that I said to him, man, you're a way better man than me, I would have smacked that guy in the chin. Like I've seen, have you done an interview with Nathan yet?
Yeah, I did one interview with Nathan.
Yeah. The guy, like some of the things that you won't hear about, but he helped a pregnant lady with a baby into her car one time. You could just see she was struggling. He left the table that he was at. He went and helped her like a good guy does. Yeah? And the guy that owned the parking lot started screaming at this woman that she'd parked where she wasn't meant to park or whatever. And Nathan said, hey, just calm down, like just leave it be. This guy's dropped his books. He's about 5 foot tall, and he's shaping up to Nathan wanting to fight him. And I'm like, fuck. But he didn't do it. He walked away. He made sure the woman was safe and got in her car. And he walked away. And I said, dude, I could not do that. I would have beat the shit out of that guy, just for yelling. And this guy was yelling at Nathan from across the road while we were sitting in the cafe. And I said, how do you do that? And he said, what benefit would I get out of this? And I was like, man, you're such a better man than me. Like, oh, yeah. So in saying that, yeah, training Nathan was the highlight. Melissa and I moved away for a little bit. We did it on mining. We were on some amazing money out there. And we walked away from that because I knew at that stage, I wanted to go back and train Nathan because I said, he's one in a million. I will never train anyone like this guy again. And I don't want to miss out. I want to be on that wave and I want to ride it. And then when I come home from the mining, that's when I set up Urban Fight Gym back then. I set that up. Nathan helped me set it up, got us up and running. And then we had just amazing time, like the first 3 or 4 years, we traveled the world. He won fights in the Scandinavian K1. We went to Hong Kong. I think you and I were chatting about the fight in Hong Kong.
That was in Macau when you came over to Macau, yeah?
Yeah, and just Japan, America, everywhere. It was just brilliant. It was such a good memory of the fight industry. Yeah.
And Nathan had such a strong punch and kick and elbow and knee. Any tips for people how to hold pads for something like that? Because it must give you a bit of pressure on your joints and that, man.
It does. I do too. I actually run pad holding seminars every now and then to show people the tricks that I have learned for holding with Nathan. And we, with Urban Muay Thai now, one of our niche markets is the beginners, showing beginners how to do Muay Thai. So they come in and they do like 4 weeks training with us and see if they like it. Well, one of the biggest things of that 4 weeks is how to hold pads properly. Because if you know how to hold pads properly where you don't hurt yourself, you're way less chance of the boxer injuring themselves as well. And we've got some guys in our gym that might have had 1 fight, 2 fights, or no fights that are really good pad holders and really good for the boxers, because they enjoy it. It's a way of being involved, and every gym needs pad holders. So I do show people different ways of doing it and how to do it, which has worked for me. Before I even started holding for Nathan, years ago when I was a kid, I've broken the scaphoid bone in both of my wrists. One of them's now disintegrated, so it's actually just a little bit left. And the other one's, it's okay, but it's still, if I get it x-rayed, it's still broken. So I have a lot of problems with my wrist, but mainly because of the broken bones in there. But funny one we noticed just on this trip that I've just done with my wife, that every time I jump into water or I do that, my right shoulder doesn't go much higher than my head, whereas my left one goes straight up. The right one doesn't really make it. So when I'm diving into water, I'm diving in like this. We figured that out. That's a bit of an injury from years hitting pads.
To be honest, even any boxing and that, we all impinge our shoulders and have this hunch forward. Like I've got it too, man. I got a bad left shoulder as well, and it's kind of forward. But you just reminded me when I went to Thailand, I'm jumping off some cliff thing somewhere, and my arms don't go up very high either. And I nearly tore my fucking arms off when I hit the water because you're supposed to be like a pin or something. And I got my arms out, and it just really felt like it was going to tear my arms off. Jesus.
Yeah, I choose to pin drop now, so it's feet first.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, in saying that too, though, it doesn't matter what sport you do, you're going to bang yourself up if you love it. The funny thing with my wrist is I had an insurance claim because I done it falling off hanging a punching bag on a roof and I fell off. But it was actually my gym, so I was lucky enough I had some work cover. And anyway, for 5 years I had to get an X-ray every December and sit down with a specialist, and they just looked at it. And the specialist said to me, he said, "Man, I've got people with less of an injury that can't go to work, and you're holding pads for boxers and kickboxers." He was actually a Cambodian guy, so he knew all about Muay Thai. And I said to him, "Yeah, but I love what I do. If I was out fixing motorbikes or, like working a manual job, my wrist would ache. If I use a hammer, it aches. If I use a screwdriver, but I do it every day. I'm blessed that I do what I love every day. So my bones don't hurt. Yeah, sure, they hurt a bit when it's raining or I go down and visit mum and dad in Victoria and they ache a bit, but you're going to get injuries no matter what you do if you do it properly."
I got to mention something I saw because it's part of what you're talking about. This guy the other day in my team, one of my co-workers got hit by a taxi walking home from work. It was on camera. I saw it. He got knocked onto his ass like a taxi moving pretty fast. Gets up, goes home, refuses to go and get any work cover stuff. Comes to work that night. It was in the morning after a night shift. Comes back the same night. That's just a warrior, man.
That's tough. Yeah. I don't think I'd be doing that. I'd be staying down for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing, man. So in your experience, I'd just like to get a couple of bits of advice from you for people that are looking at training, etc. Like, how would you recommend people look for a good gym or a good trainer?
You can't go past going in there. You can look on Facebook, you can look on Instagram, their websites, everything. It comes down to the feel when you walk in the door. What's the feel? You know, we have a process here where we obviously advertise and stuff like that, and we talk to people, and we have a short-term commitment, 4 weeks. Give us 4 weeks of trying it with other beginners and feel it out, and then go with your heart. You can't make that sort of decision without being there. Up in on the Gold Coast, I have a bit to do with the Broadbeach Football Club, and I've been around football. I love AFL. I've been around football clubs all my life, but this is a club you walk in and you feel like you've been there forever. It's an old, it's not even that pretty. It's a bit of a dingy club, but it's got a lovely bar, little pokies area. There's kids running around, there's family, there's a pizza bar, there's everything you want. Because I walked in there. Now, I've been in plenty of other football clubs and I haven't felt that. But this place done it for me, and I've been a member there for nearly 20 years that I've been on the Gold Coast. It's the same with Muay Thai gyms. If you're going to be going there 3, 4, 5 times a week, you want to make sure you enjoy it, So I think people, they're a little bit, maybe there's a little bit of a stigma with boxing gyms and Muay Thai gyms because you see the movies or, even 20 or 30 years ago, they were pretty tough places to walk into. I think now they're much more accepting. You walk in there and just watch a couple of classes, talk to the trainer, talk to the people walking out the door, and make up your mind from there.
Yeah, man. And another question I've always asked lately. I've been asking a lot of the trainers and that. When people walk in a gym, sometimes you think this is going to be a great guy or whatever. What are your kind of attributes that you would find in someone that you think would be a champion? What sort of attributes would you be looking for? Would people have that you've worked with that makes them a champion? And you mentioned a bit with Carnage before about his competitive nature and ability to take that step further to make sure it's all perfect. What other sort of attributes would you expect for a champion, a potential champion?
Yeah, one word. It's one attribute. It is respect. You've got to respect the gym, your trainer, the people around, but most of all, you have to respect yourself. We deal with, as any other gym does, we deal with people on all levels, and we give respect straight away. You've got to give it back straight away. If you don't give it back, there's the door. Don't let it hit you in the arse on the way out. With Urban Muay Thai, before Urban Muay Thai opened, I trained at Five Rings. I trained at Boon Shoe. I had my own gyms down in Victoria, which were on a smaller level. In the 12 years that I've been open here, the Miami gym, and now we've got the Tweed location as well, but in the 12 years that I've ran this gym, I've kicked more people out of this gym in 12 years than I did the previous 20 years before that. Because I used to put up with people's shit thinking, we're going to help this guy, we're going to do this and that. But then I learned what respect is. Now, I get that people might have drug, alcohol, relationship, work problems, whatever the problems may be. I get that. But you cannot, and there is no excuse for taking that out on the innocent or the people that are there to help you. There's no two ways of it. I like people to come into my gym and bow or do something that reminds them that when they step in the gym, they're leaving all that shit outside. The gym is for them for an hour and a half. Like, so if you're a dad like me, you work hard and, things aren't going to plan. Your missus could be pregnant again and you're looking, like it's just not what I planned. When you walk in my gym, that's your time to forget about that outside world and just work on yourself. Just train and be the best person you can be. When you go outside and you look at those problems again, you might have a different view. You might think, it's not so bad. Like I'm a good dad. I'll provide for this new kid. Whatever the case may be, I'm just picking things out of a hat here. But 100% it's respect. It goes right across the board, and it's respect for, and then it goes further. It goes, you might start to respect your boss a bit more because he actually employs you, he pays you. You know, you might not like the job that you have to do, but that's not your boss's fault. That's your fault. You know, you can change that. Excuse me. So respect for me is a big thing. We run a teenage program directed at boys, and it's called Respect Muay Thai. And it's so deep, that word. It's just got so many branches that come off it that, you know, if you're not respecting yourself, you're not respecting anyone. Okay, so it starts with you. Once you learn to respect people for the position that they're in or whatever, it's like the Thai people. They bow to their elders. Yeah, they pay respect on all levels, you know. They're always bowing to the older people, the older trainers, their family. They get down low on the ground and bow to the people they super respect, you know. It's a beautiful thing, and it's a life changer. It's a game changer, but it saves people's lives. If you learn to respect yourself and then respect other people, life will change for you big time.
Yeah, man, that comes back to your traditional martial arts sort of background and that as well. And, you know, that respect is obviously a big part of that. And it's kind of interesting because you've almost come full circle, right? Because in the beginning, it sounds like you weren't very respectful and you're a young fella fighting people and stuff. And now you come full circle that you're actually expecting and teaching people to have that in their lives and training right now.
Yeah, dude, I'm about to turn 50, you know, so I was a 1972 model, you know, like back in those days, if you disrespected people, you got an ass whooping. And then something changed in around about the 90s where people stopped getting picked up on being disrespectful. It almost become cool to be disrespectful. Now, this is, for me personally, and I'm not saying anyone else, this is me, Richie Walsh, this is why I don't watch UFC. For me, there's not enough respect. I will not waste my Sunday watching UFC. I've watched 4 fights in my life, 2 of them because it was Hector Lombard and I had the pleasure of holding pads for Leicester. The other 2 were Conor McGregor ones because they were so hyped up, yeah? And so I had to check it out. It got the better of me. But I won't watch it because A, I love Muay Thai, but B, I don't like the disrespect. You don't need to do that. Look at one championship, man. These guys are so respectful. When Mini T fought Rod Tang, was it? Remember the end of that fight? Like they were bound, they were bloodied warriors that were cut up, and all he could do was respect him because he took the fight on short notice. And Mini T's a legend, man. They're the guys we need up on pedestals, not these guys that are mouthing off. Don't get me wrong, I like Conor McGregor. I like his bravado and all that sort of stuff. But that sense, I got a 10-year-old son. I got 3 boys. The oldest one's 11. All I talk about with him is respect. He's a good basketballer, and he's a bit taller than the other boys. I said, that's great. You know, like 11 years old, you're a bit taller. I said, wait till you're 12 and 13. This guy's going to be like this. If you've disrespected them, they ain't going to forget it. They're going to remember it. And that whole thing about learning to pick someone up, not pull them down. Australia is very bad for pulling people down. Very bad. That tall poppy syndrome. We're like crabs at the bottom of a bucket and just pulling the other guys down because we don't want that crab to get out. That's a really bad attribute of Australia. I'm trying my hardest to teach people respect. Respect yourself, respect everyone else.
Man, I love watching all combat sports, to be honest. Muay Thai, even BJJ, and a lot of MMA, UFC. There's actually, there's a kind of a trend, probably mostly after Conor McGregor, of people like talking a lot of shit and that. But luckily, there's still quite a lot of guys that are very respectful and still carry the flag for, you know, traditional way of thinking. And one thing that kind of comes to mind is when I think about it offhand, a lot of the new Aussie fighters and Kiwi fighters, their backgrounds come from gyms that are very respectful and they come across in a respectful way. So that's a good thing. There's not too many of the Aussies running their mouth unless they get provoked, you know. So same with the Kiwis. Not a bad thing.
I reckon the Southern Hemisphere, the Anzacs are brilliant at it. The Dan Hookers and the Adesanya's and the guys. I love the way they talk. You know, I met Izzy when we were in Turkey. We were over there when I think Corbett fought Saki that night. Anyway, in a tournament, but we got to hang out with him and Ethan Shep, you know, and those guys, I mean, they're exception to the cause. They do stuff that's entertaining, you know, without at the cost of someone else, you know, and I love that. And then they back it up with their fighting. Yeah, definitely not saying they're all of that, but for me, that's I do switch off because I think the majority of those guys, it's all about the weigh-in and this. I don't mind a stare down, don't get me wrong, but this, starting fights and throwing shit through bus windows and that does not do it for me. I don't want my kids watching that.
Understood.
A bit old fashioned.
Understood. Hey man, back onto the topic of some of your knowledge, man. The path to being a good fighter, man. What would you recommend to people that want to be a high level fighter, be it pro level as an example? What sort of things they have to do just from the beginning? What do they have to do to get there?
You get a relationship with your coach that is beneficial for you. It goes both ways. That coach, there's such underrated people, the coaches. They put so much time in it, especially into kids, and then the kid turns 18 and out the door he's gone because he's allowed to go to the nightclubs and you never see him again. So it's heartbreaking for trainers. You talk to trainers over the years, more of them have quit because they've put so much time into kids and then it never comes back. We're all ex-fighters and we're people that we see that spark in this kid's eye and we can, to be honest, we can tick our own box. Okay, I mightn't have made it or I didn't get, but this kid can make it. I can show him, it's really heartbreaking when they don't come back. So for a kid that's starting out, get yourself a trainer that means something to you, that it is generally your father, your second father, or that he might fill the void for a lot of boys that, and girls, sorry, fill the void for a lot of people that don't have a male role model or a female role model that they can look up to. Doesn't matter. Head trainer of our gym, Leonie, she's now the boss of both my gyms. She's a fantastic role model. People look up to her. People respect her. She's still fighting, and people see the work she does, and she's a great role model for people. You won't see her out getting busted doing cocaine and carrying on stupid, all this sort of stuff. She's a great person. She's out to help you as much as well. So for a young fighter, just keep turning up, get a good relationship with your trainer, because I've seen people that aren't that skilled win titles because they're in the right hands. They're looked after by the right people. So your job is to find that right person. And another big thing that sort of is changing in the Muay Thai industry, it used to be you started at one gym and you finished at that gym. I've had some other fighters come from other gyms, but it's very, very mutual. I speak to that trainer and say, hey, what's happening here? This guy's turned up. I've had the same thing with Mark Pease is my best example. I've sent 2 or 3 fighters to Mark Pease because they just weren't working with me or I was unable to train them properly. Rang Mark Pease and said, I want to send you this guy or girl. Can you help her out or him out? Yes, I can. Beautiful. And you see them blossom. They grow to that next level. People swap gyms. It's okay. Footballers change football clubs all the time, and you get better results out of them when they go to this other place because they're a little bit more comfortable. But I think it is like that's what I'm sort of suggesting. Find the gym, the trainer that's right for you, and if they're not right for you, speak up. Don't just leave and then pop up on another show under this guy, because that's disrespectful to the trainer. Talk to that trainer and say, hey man, for whatever reason I'm not feeling it, I want to go and train here. Can you contact the trainer for me? Most trainers know each other. They'll ring them and say, hey man, got a good kid coming your way, let's go. So
yeah, man. And just a question, your pro level sort of guys, what's your expectations of them as far as training goes? What sort of output you expect from them?
It's a big load. In fact, I'm only training a couple of pros at the moment because it's such a big load. When I had no kids, it was great. I was there morning and night, and they were training morning and night. So Nathan in his heyday was doing 3 sessions a day. That was including weights and everything like that, but he was able to go home and rest. I've got a young kid now, Nick Browning, really good kid, got himself a Queensland tile and he's at a good weight where he'll get plenty of fights. He's got his own painting business. So we have to train at 5 in the morning. We do a little bit and then he comes in the afternoon and does pads with a pad holder there. I can't commit the time anymore that I used to. So we have to figure it out. And I understand that he can't commit because he's going to be on his feet all day, up and down ladders. So as long as they're putting in 100%, that could be 4 times a week. If that's enough, if they're getting enough, I'll just tailor the training towards it. Nick at the moment, he's probably doing I think he has Wednesday mornings off and Sundays off. So he's doing for 5 days a week, training twice a day. So he's still getting plenty of training. Instead of having a Saturday, Sunday off, he has a Wednesday morning off, comes in Wednesday night, and then he has all Sunday off. So It's hard to know. Everyone is different. Shannon Forrester trained twice a day, every day, 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. And that's what he did. So I think it sort of comes down to the individual. You've got to be prepared. You've got to be out of bed and going for a run. If you're not hitting pads with your trainer or kicking a bag, getting watch, you've got to be out doing the runs. And if you're kidding yourself on that, if you're not running, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah, man. And the other question, you just touched on it with Nathan doing a bit of weights and that. What are your feelings on strength and conditioning? Obviously, a lot of people working on these things these days. Firstly, so they can make nice Instagram pics. Secondly, so they can improve their performance. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, it does definitely makes a difference for Insta. If it's done the right way, fantastic. What we have to be very careful of in the personal training weight industry is people want to help fighters and they know what gets people fit, but they haven't been a fighter themselves. If you can find an ex-fighter to go, and I don't mean someone that just trained in a gym, I said someone that's been a fighter, I would tip my whole package of guys towards them. Because of the simple fact, what I've found in the past is that the personal trainers will overtrain the boxer, and then he'll come to the gym and he'll be flat. And if you're flat doing the thing that you're a professional at, you're going to get down and you go home, you start questioning it. You line up, you go back and do another weight session, you do a great weight session, then you come back and do another shitty session on the pad. It starts to play on your mind. And I've seen it so many times, and I mean a lot. And I've had to pull up fighters, I've had to go to the PT, and it's never easy, never an easy thing. My thing with weights is lots of weights when you haven't got a fight booked. Hit those weights. When you get close to a fight, you've got to have an 8-week thing, do your 4 weeks of weights, and then I like them to back it off and just concentrate on Muay Thai, because you're not going to a bodybuilding competition. You're not going to a CrossFit competition. You're going to a Muay Thai competition. So that's all I want you to focus on. I want to drop the weights. And what I find with them after about 2 weeks is they start to bounce back just in time to peak for their fight. So yeah, yes, I'm all for it. We're actually looking at increasing our weights in our gym. We're actually looking at building a mezzanine level to put all weights, because I can see the benefit. The way Nathan used to do it, I couldn't believe how quick he recovered from fights. And this is a heavyweight fighting big guys. And within 3 or 4 days, he was good to go. And I put that down to his doing weights, because his muscles knew how to recover quickly. So he'd do a hard session, go home and rest, come back and do Muay Thai, go home and rest, and feed that body all the time. And I think it did set him up well for what he was doing. Yeah. Yeah,
man, there's a lot of talk about it, strengthening joints and helping to reduce injury as well, right? Hey,
well, that's what I saw. And I am an advocate. It needs to be done. It just needs to be done right. And you're not training. This is what I say to the PTs that they're working with. He's not training to be on stage and stand there and do this. He's going to look great anyway because of the Muay Thai training, but it has to be tailored towards Muay Thai.
And a question on a few other things that I see a lot in the media these days, people working on rest and recovery, like ice baths, saunas, rest as in sleeping, breath work, nutrition. Yeah. What are your feelings on all those things as far as Muay Thai?
100%. Pre-COVID, and now that the borders are starting to open up, one of the big things I want to do is get Jason Sooty out to Australia, to Queensland, and go through the ice bath stuff. I know he's been working with Wim Hof a lot, and I got to talk to him about that. I 100% recommend the ice bathing, the breathing practice, because I don't know what their numbers are, but a great percentage of people do Muay Thai to get this thing right. Their body gets the benefits, yes, but this thing up here, and you see a lot of guys when they stop training, they struggle again, and the breathing teaches you to control this thing up here. It's such a powerful weapon between the two ears, but it can also be such a devastating weapon as well. Everyone says Muay Thai is the sport of 8 limbs or 8 weapons, but this thing up here, it is the most key. So if you can learn to breathe and control your emotions a little bit better, 100%, whatever it takes, take a day off training and go and do it. Make sure you're doing it. I'm dead set all for the breathing, and I know the ice bath stuff is related, because they teach you to breathe with that ice on you and not panic, it's great. I think it's fantastic for fighters.
Yeah, man. There's a guy called Dave Wood who's a Kiwi. He's been working with all those guys, Dan Hooker, Israel Adesanya, and these guys. I've listened to a few. I had a talk with him as well, but I had to listen to a few of his podcasts. They're taking to a really deep level, and it sounds like a really beneficial thing to do. Just that ability to remain calm in uncomfortable situations, you know. And obviously, the most uncomfortable situation almost you could ever get is getting in the ring and fighting someone who's also trained to fight you. So obviously applies to martial arts and fighting, right?
Well, that's exactly what I mean by the time when I fought Leicester. Like, he broke my heart. He broke my spirit backstage. He'd done the job. He'd already won the fight. I had to recenter myself. And my corner, even the guys that were in my corner were inexperienced guys. They were just guys from my gym that were there to help me. Like, they shit themselves. Like, he was so intense, and it threw me out. If I had known how to zone it, that's what you see these tennis players, like 5-hour battles in 45-degree heat. They're 2 sets down on Leighton Hewitt, the good Aussie, you know. He used to battle back and win the fights, you know, win the tennis game. And seeing people do that, I love that. That's one of the parts of the sport that I really love. All the odds against you, everything's going wrong, but this thing up here is strong, and it just gets you through. So
that kind of jumps into the next topic, the last sort of question I had for you, man. So obviously in fighting and coaching as well, you know, it's not really a game that you're necessarily going to make millions of dollars. Obviously, the top echelon of people make millions of dollars. So what are the benefits or what are the good things that you've gotten from fighting and coaching?
Community. I love the Muay Thai community. It's amazing. When I had my gym down in Warrnambool in Victoria, I was actually, we just used to train in a shed that I hired, which was actually a double garage. And it was it wasn't a dark period of my life, but it wasn't a great period. I was drinking a lot and hadn't found that, you know, like I had a certain amount of fights and I'd fallen out of training and things were just weren't going right. But the community of boys around me that I trained lifted me up and got me to stop drinking so much and, you know, concentrate. And then we had this amazing run of fights, you know, back in the day. I moved fast forward up to 2001, I think it was. Excuse me. And I came up to Queensland and walked into Boon Chu Gym as the pad holder that was missing. Like, they didn't have a pad holder. So I've walked in straight away, 30 guys want to get to know me. You know, like, I'm going back to people's place for coffee and dinner and let's go here, let's go there. And we started going to fight shows and it was a very busy time, early 2000. And we'd have one fighter who was maybe up for their second fight, fighting up at Joe Hilton's show on the Sunny Coast, which is, you know, a couple of hours drive by bus. We'd have 40 people going, you know, because they just wanted to be a part of something. And the Gold Coast is one of those really transient towns where people are French and German and from everywhere else, Japan. And so they come and they're looking for community. They're looking for somewhere to belong. It's actually what shaped my gym to what it is now. Our vision and mission and value, one of those values is to provide a place of belonging. You walk into our gym, we want you to think, oh, this is cool. I love this place. You know, everyone's welcoming. There's no ego. There's, you know, like I said, I've kicked out more guys that were wankers out of this gym than I have 20 years prior. And now I know why. It's because it provides you with community. Everyone wants to belong. As much as you're an individual, it's great to belong to something. So, yeah, I think that's a big thing for me.
True, man. Mateship and, you know, community. And then also you mentioned the traveling as well has been a big part of it. Yeah, it's a great thing to also get to do as part of your life, to travel around with fighters or fighting yourself, man. Quite a good thing.
Oh, we've had some amazing trips and lots of them. And between John Wayne fighting and Shannon, they were both regular overseas. Paul Briggs boxing. I remember at one stage, I don't even know where I came home from, but I came home, we arrived home at Brisbane in the morning. We drove back down to the Gold Coast. So I emptied my suitcase out and my wife, Melissa, it was girlfriend at the time, repacked it and I jumped on another plane and went to WA or something with more fighters. Like, it was just that all the time. But I loved it. Like I said, I had no kids then. I had a passport and I was ready to go, and we had some really cracker trips. So you always got funny stories. I mean, there's so many funny stories, but you get to know other trainers as well. We travelled away with Mark Pease. I travelled away with Nugget. I travelled away with John Anui from J&I, you know, just different trips to different states. I hooked up I remember looking after Preacher McPhee one time when we were in Newcastle because Scotty Bannon couldn't make it or whatever. You know, just amazing trips. They were really good fun.
That's awesome, man. All right, man. Well, we've hit the hour mark, and so we'll finish up now. But yeah, I wanted to thank you so much for your time. Been good to hear about your journey in martial arts, man. Some good little bits of information for anyone listening. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really enjoy it. It's always good to go back and think of the old stories and things that happened. But yeah, no, really enjoyed it. And I love the work you're doing, Toby. It's great.
Thanks, man. We caught up with got a couple of the guys together a couple of weeks ago, Riddler and Mark Pease. Might do the same with you one day, man. Catch up with someone and have a break, talk about some sort of, cross sort of information collaboration, as I call it, on the videos.
Yeah. Down for that. Yeah, always on for a chat.
Awesome, man. All right. Thanks for your time, bro.
Thanks, bro.